Alright, people. George Kambosos defeats Maxie Hughes on a 12-round majority decision. Now, I watched this fight this morning and I knew the result beforehand. So I went into this fight knowing the result, knowing that it was George Kambosos who won, and knowing that there was a big uproar about it. Now, when I seen the uproar that was happening, in one sense I wasn't exactly too surprised because I did feel Maxie Hughes was game going into this fight, but I just thought Kambosos would nick it. When I see uproar, I often take it with a grain of salt, and I'll tell you why. It's because a lot of times now in boxing, you could have a fight that is genuinely close. You know, you could have a fight that genuinely could go either way, a bit like Devin Haney versus Vasily Lomachenko, where the consensus is that Lomachenko won and that this fight was just a robbery. Even though, go and look at it, it was a very, very close competitive fight. And to be honest with you, it could have went either way. If you had Lomachenko winning happy, if you had Devin Haney winning happy, I could even make a case for a draw. It was that type of fight. So when I seen that, I was like, okay, let's watch this fight. Let's score it. And let's see whether this really was a robbery, because that word gets thrown around an awful lot. And you devalue the word robbery when you start doing that, because if everything is a robbery, well, then you're going to miss the real ones, right? This fight, I watched it, 12 rounds, and I am dumbstruck how George Kambosos won this fight. Now, this fight right here, when you watch this is more a robbery, because I saw Maxie Hughes box beautifully in there. A very good display of counter-punching, very good clean shots, was the ring general in there, was effective with his work, didn't miss a beat, and I thought he looked unreal in there. You know, he really is one of these fighters who over the last couple of years has really come into his strides. Yes, he lost early on in his career, he had 5 losses going into this fight, but that was at a time, because I've actually interviewed Maxie Hughes and he's a very, very nice man, real gentleman. And he spoke about how, and actually when I spoke to him, he was actually only home from driving, I think he drove to Norris or somewhere. He drove a long way just to spar. I think he was sparring Jazza Dickens or someone like that. And he was going up and down the country to spar. He was training at home and he was holding down a full-time job. So he never really had ideal preparation back then. Then he obviously got the win over John O'Carroll, was able to get sponsored, was obviously managed by that crowd who are no longer around. You know the one? El Chapahan. And it was obviously picked up by Matchroom. So it meant that he could go full-time. It meant that he didn't have to rely on his job anymore. He could focus on boxing. And since then, he was already looking good, but then he just started looking better, because you could see this is someone who's able to focus on the sport 100% of the time. And, you know, you do wonder, there are fighters out there, I've spoke about that on the small hall stage, who they have to work full-time. They can't commit to boxing full-time, unfortunately, because they're just not making enough money. And you wonder what type of talent we're losing out on. Because Maxie Hughes is a tremendous fighter. He really is. He's a tremendous talent. Let's talk about this fight. First and foremost, I have to say the styles, in my opinion, didn't gel together well at all. You know, you have Kambosos, who's looking to be aggressive, looking to get his work done. I give Maxie Hughes, who's more a natural counter-puncher as opposed to an out-and-out boxer. You know, you see someone like Devin Haney who will let his hands go a little bit, who will look for shots, who will pot shot. Maxie Hughes is more a counter-puncher. He will wait. He will happily wait for you to make a move, and then he'll look to come in with counters. What was immediately apparent, and the ESPN team, who I felt were a little bit too pro-Kambosos in this fight, they were mentioning the fact that it had been 9 years. In fact, his third professional fight was the last time Kambosos fought a southpaw, albeit he had sparred extensively with Manny Pacquiao. That was a long time ago, and it really did show up in this fight, because the southpaw angles and the southpaw stance really seemed to befuddle George Kambosos in there. One thing I was noticing about Kambosos was that he was moving into Maxie Hughes' lead hand an awful lot, which is something that you really don't want to be doing, because it's actually closing the range down. It's making him an easier target for the left hand. There was oftentimes in this fight, especially the 5th round, where I was actually urging Maxie Hughes to throw it more, because he was literally there for the taking with her, and he was standing real upright as well. So it did very poor in terms of Kambosos, in the sense of he could not get to grips with the southpaw stance. Again, the styles didn't gel together massively. Like, this was not a fight you go back and rewatch 100 times because it was such a barn burner. It wasn't like that. But from the first round, you could tell that Maxie Hughes was on it. Kambosos really, I felt like, okay, is he warming into this fight? But as the rounds progressed, it was apparent he wasn't. And again, it was lovely counterboxing, counter punching, I should say, from Maxie Hughes. He hurt Kambosos, I think it was in the second round, to the body. And I do think Maxie Hughes, if there was one criticism I had was when he did hurt Kambosos, the head and the body, he didn't really push the action as much as I think he could have. You know, and this was towards the back end of the round. He landed a nice left hand just into the kind of stomach area of George Kambosos, and he really did. He kind of, you could see, it was almost like he was just stopped. And Maxie Hughes didn't really do anything at the end of the round ended, but he won that round anyway. And then in the fifth round, that was a round where he appeared to stun George Kambosos. He actually opened up a little cut. Now, there was a clash of heads in the sixth round, which ultimately ended with both guys getting cut, but the original cut was caused by a punch that Maxie Hughes landed on Kambosos in the fifth round. And he was stunned in that fifth round, make no mistake about it. The commentary team were mentioning the fact that Maxie Hughes is not a devastating puncher. Certainly, judging by his record, he's not a devastating puncher. He's got respectable power there. And I think that Kambosos, to his detriment, obviously assumed that, okay, this guy really can't punch, so I can take a few more risks. And obviously he found out in the fifth round, actually, this guy hits a lot harder than I actually thought. He just couldn't set himself. So I have the scorecards here. 114, 114 a draw, 170 and 111, which is a bizarre scorecard really, and a 115 and 113. The 170 and 111 scorecard to George Kambosos is a complete and utter sham. It's a disgrace. There should have been a 170 and 111 scorecard in this fight to Maxie Hughes. So I'll tell you the rounds I gave to Kambosos. I gave Kambosos the fourth round, I gave him the seventh round, and I gave him the 10th round. So they're the only three. Every other round I gave to Maxie Hughes. And as the rounds were progressing, and to be fair to the ESPN team, I think they had the fight scored exactly the same as I did. You really couldn't make a case. I mean, Kambosos was labouring. He had no answer to anything that Maxie Hughes was coming with. I think at times after the fifth round, he was a little bit intimidated by the punching power, so he was a bit more reluctant to engage. And I just felt that Maxie Hughes, he was ring general in there. His punches were clean and effective. He was controlling everything in this fight. You know, he really was. He was beating Kambosos to the punch every time, I felt. And it was a beautiful display, and it was lovely to see. And I'm just peeved off that, again, we have one of these situations where the guy coming over, the away fighter comes over, gets absolutely shafted on the scorecards. You know, people say boxing is subjective, and to some extent it is. You know, certainly for me, I would be someone who does like the cleaner, effective punches rather than the aggression. And you know, with Kambosos in this fight, he was being the aggressor to an extent. But you got to remember, one of the criteria for scoring a fight is you have to have effective aggression, right? Well, this was ineffective. So you can score effective aggression, yeah, but not ineffective aggression. You know, he was ineffective with everything he was doing in this fight with Kambosos. So for the rounds where he was pushing the action but he was still getting caught, you can't give him really anything in them because he was ineffective with everything he was doing. But it can be subjective to some extent. But you see a pattern, and I've said this for the longest, that in a fight like this, where, especially a fight like this, because you do see it in close fights, where it is genuinely close, and then there's just a bizarre scorecard. You know, I think Haney Lomachenko was a bit like that, where it was just a bizarre scorecard. I think, like, one judge gave Haney the 10th round, which was completely nuts. You see bizarre scorecards in close fights, and you just think that's not subjective, because there's no way anyone could see it that way regardless. And again, this here, there's no way the judges could see the fight like this. Like, I'll give you an example. The 170-111 scorecard. First round he gave to Kambo. I have the scorecard here, the way he scored it. Which judge was it actually who scored it? It was, what's his name? Joseph Mason. I've never heard of him. Now, I have heard of David Sutherland, one of the other scorers, and who's this guy? Greg Rittler. Again, I haven't. So there are judges in America and in the UK you would hear of. Like, you would know and you would hear from time to time their names, and you actually kind of think like, okay, they're normally A-OK, and other times, you know, like a Steve Weisfeld is normally A-OK. He wasn't scoring in this fight. But this guy here, Joseph Mason, he gave the first round to Kambosos. Didn't give him the first round. Second round to Kambosos, again, didn't give him that round. Third round to Maxie Hughes. rightfully so. Fourth round to Kambosos, no real argument there. Fifth round, definitely, to Maxie Hughes. And then he gave every single round, apart from the 12th round, to George Kambosos, which is absurd. How could anyone look at those rounds? Yes, the 7th round, fair enough. You want to give that to Kambosos? Yeah, fair enough. It was a close round, but yeah, I gave it to Kambosos too. But the rest of them were all Maxie Hughes rounds. Like, what the actual F is going on with this scorecard right here? And the other two scorecards are just as bad. Like, I mean, yeah, you could say they were closer, a lot closer, but still, the wrong guy won. And that's what I feel in this fight. I feel the wrong guy won. I feel the scorecards look absolutely absurd. The fact that you didn't even have one judge given the fight, even as a split decision, to Maxie Hughes is really an eyebrow raiser. And, I spoke a little bit earlier about subjective scoring. Some judges would say, well, it's subjective. Well, if it's subjective, surely we should have a greater disparity between one fighter getting this result and one fighter getting this, but we don't. It always seems to be the A-side fighter regardless. And Kambosos isn't really that much of an A-side guy with Top Rank. He's not a Shakur Stevenson. He's not a Devin Haney or someone like that. So for him to get a scorecard like this, it's bizarre to me. Maxie Hughes won this fight. They really should run it back. They should run it back. I was going to say on neutral ground, but it's in America. It is technically both on neutral ground, but they should run this fight back because Maxie Hughes won this damn fight. I don't get right with it. He won this fight. He won it clearly. And, as I said earlier, the word robbery gets thrown around a lot. And I do think it devaluates it a little bit. But when there are genuine robberies, that's why I think we need to be more up in arms about this when there are genuine robberies. There's a difference between a fight that's genuinely close and could go either way and a fight that genuinely is a robbery, like this fight right here. Like Josh Taylor versus Jack Cattrall, etc. Those types of fights, we need to speak about them, and the judges need to be put on blast. And even judges who put out ridiculous scorecards, like in the Usyk Joshua rematch, where one judge had Joshua winning. I can't remember his name now, but they need to be put on blast, and Rob Tebbett did that because he actually went and interviewed that judge, and the judge was just like a proper politician, like no comment, no comment, no comment. They need to put them on blast for stuff like that. They'd be held to a higher standard because this is going to keep happening. It's going to keep happening. And, in the ring after, Kambosos was talking about, Shakur Stevenson and stuff like that. He needs to rematch Maxie Hughes as far as I'm concerned, because Maxie Hughes has gone in there and he's boxed the fight of his life. And he's won this fight, but he's not got the decision, which is an absolute disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace, and I hope that doesn't negatively impact Maxie Hughes in a sense of he feels let down. Well, he would feel let down, but he feels demoralised is probably a better word, because he still has a lot to give. It was not a punishing fight in the least, so he's not going to go out of that fight taking abuse and damage, and you wonder, like, he didn't even get the decision, but he's left a bit of himself in the ring. It's not like that, so I'm hoping he's able to come again, and he has plenty of fights still in him. And he's got plenty of time to have that breakout fight. It's just a shame it wasn't this one. It really is. It's a shame it wasn't this one. A very good performance by Maxie Hughes. Excellent. He belongs on the world stage, certainly. Question needs to be asked about Kambosos. It was a very, very good performance against Teofimo Lopez. But since then, he's really faltered. He's really not flattered at all. So, questions have to be asked there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Did you feel as though the right guy won? I'd be interested to know if you did. And do you, like me, feel that this was a disgraceful scoring? The scorecards were absolutely awful. 170 and 111 to Kambosos. That judge needs to go before the commission and explain that scorecard. Explain that, because I cannot make heads or tails of that scorecard. It was not a 170 and 111 type of fight for Kambosos. For Maxie Hughes, hell yeah, it was a 170 and 111. I only gave Kambosos 3 rounds in this fight. Maybe 4 at a push. But even then, it's a 116 and 112 scorecard anyway then. There's no way I could make a case for, with fights like Haney-Lomachenko, make a case for Haney winning. Yeah. There's plenty of fights where you could make a case for someone winning. If you felt they didn't deserve it, you could still make a case that they won it and it was close enough. There's no case I can make for Kambosos winning this fight. He didn't win it. So, absolutely shocking scorecards. hope this video gets around and people can actually have a look at it, because as I said, these things need to be talked about. They really do. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Smash the video, or smash the like button if you can. Hit subscribe, share the video, because that does help as well. And let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed it, people. Peace.